will say we were staying at the King David and it was so fancy. I didn't know how to behave. Like it was way fancier then. And now YouTube knows that too. Great.
Can I tell you a quick story?
Sure.
Back before the War of 67. No, it was after the war, the first trip back. And my friend and I went to the King David for lunch. We were treating ourselves. And Moshe Dayan was sitting at the next table.
Wow.
That was
That's incredible.
That's my story.
That's a very good story. I am told that Rob Lowe was there this week. He's not the same as Moshe Dayan.
I have a better story.
Oh, Linda Kushner Silverman has a better story.
I was there
We're
right
not
after.
competing with our stories, but go ahead.
No, but I got picked up and put on by Moshe Dayan in the elevator. He came on to me. I was a kid in the elevator.
Okay, for anybody who didn't understand what Linda Kushner Silverman just said, what she said was she ran into Moshe Dayan in an elevator and he hit on her.
Whoa.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing. All right. I'm super happy to be back here with you. I'm super happy to see everybody. Let's, Ellen Rothstein says in the chat, yikes. All right. Those who have seen me here already in person know that I'm a little bit loopy because I got home after an overnight flight early this morning and meant to sleep until noon and slept until 5. So here we are. So I, as much as anybody, needs to take a moment to sort of try to calm myself down and make some space and realize that we are entering Shabbat. So let's just take a moment. I will mute everybody. And we do have a special Shabbat this evening because it is Women's History Month. And so as we are in Women's History Month, our cantorial soloist Noni has decided to do music this evening in honor of one of the very important women of recent history of the Reform movement, Debbie Friedman, who really transformed Jewish music, not only for the Reform movement, but for the whole Jewish world. And so our music tonight is going to be by Debbie Friedman, and also Noni is going to tell us more about her in a moment. So as we enter into Shabbat, we are going to begin with a nigun.
So I've never done a service of all Debbie Friedman music, and this Women's History Month, I thought something I'd love to do. And I didn't realize some of the melodies are just so beautiful, and that some of the melodies that I know well, I didn't even know that they were Debbie Friedman melodies. So I thought it's important to just remind ourselves about who she was, and the best way to do that is in the New York Times in 2011 was her obituary, And I'm going to read a little of that. With Debbie Friedman, singer of Jewish music, dies at 59. It was written by Margalit Fox in January of 2011. Debbie Friedman, a singer and songwriter whose work, which married traditional Jewish texts to contemporary folk-infused melodies, is credited with helping give ancient liturgy broad appeal to late 20th century worshipers. Died on Sunday in Mission Viejo, California. She was 59 and lived in Laguna Woods, California. And then it goes on to say what her condition was. One of the brightest stars of the Jewish music world, Miss Friedman was called the Joan Baez of Jewish song, as the Jewish newspaper The Forward wrote in 1995. She was known for her clear, strong voice and for the intense spiritual conviction with which she sang as she accompanied herself on the guitar. She recorded more than 20 albums, which together sold 500,000 copies. Among them are Miracles and Wonders, Renewal of Spirit, You Shall Be a Blessing, and The Water in the Well. Miss Friedman's compositions encompass not only modern settings of traditional Hebrew liturgy, but also songs for which she wrote original English lyrics, regularly sung by congregants in Reform, Reconstructionist, Conservative, and some modern Orthodox synagogues, as well as in some Christian churches. They're widely credited with having revitalized worship for a generation of post-war American Jews. To an extent, her work also made its way into the mainstream marketplace. In live performance, Miss Friedman sang on some of the world's most storied concert stages, including Carnegie Hall. In 2007, Miss Friedman joined the faculty of the School of Sacred Music at Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion in New York, where she taught Reform, Rabbinical, and Cantorial students. She later taught at Hebrew Union College Los Angeles' campus. Her appointment was striking for two reasons. First, because she was a largely self-taught musician who did not know how to read music. And second, because her work, inclusive, progressive, and strongly feminist, was perceived as a threat to established cantorial tradition when she began her career in the early 1970s. Deborah Lynn Friedman was born on February 8th, 1951 in Utica, New York, to parents who belonged variously to conservative and Reform synagogues. When she was a child, the family moved to Minnesota, and she grew up in St. Paul. As a teenager, she was enraptured both by Jewish and folk music. She taught herself to play the guitar from the records of Peter, Paul, and Mary, and her music would be likened to theirs. After high school, Ms. Friedman worked briefly on an Israeli kibbutz before returning to the United States. One night I went to synagogue and realized sitting there I was bored, she told the Los Angeles Times in 1995. I realized the rabbi was talking, the choir was singing, and nobody was doing anything. There was no participation. Not long afterward, an original melody came to her, and as an experiment, she set it to the words of V'ahavta, a prayer drawn from Deuteronomy that commands Jews to love God. I sang it with some high school kids who sang it arm in arm, crying and singing. Ms. Friedman told Lilith magazine in 1995 they were looking for a spiritual avenue of their own. With that, Ms. Friedman had found her calling. Her first album, Sing Unto God, a collection of Sabbath songs, was released in 1972. While some rabbis and cantors welcomed her music as a democratizing force, others saw it as a subversive breach of time-honored tradition in which the cantor was typically white-haired, always male, and usually vocally imposing, and the congregants were passive listeners. By contrast, Ms. Friedman's music emphasized audience participation. At her concert, she encouraged audience members to sing along. Many also danced in the aisles. It centered on themes like healing, a concern that stemmed partly from her years of chronic illness. Her most famous song is the setting of Mishaberach, a Hebrew prayer for the sick. Let's see. Many of her English lyrics concern the empowerment of women and other disenfranchised groups, stemming, her associates said on Monday, from the quiet pride she took in her life as a gay woman. Ms. Friedman is survived by her mother, Frida, her two sisters, Cheryl Friedman and Barbara Egley. She was a subject of a documentary film, A Journey of Spirit, which followed her from 1997 to 2002. If Ms. Friedman never attained the vast crossover success of Amy Grant, the Christian pop singer with whom she was often compared, it did not seem to bother her. In an interview with the Palm Beach Post in 2004, Ms. Friedman recounted her response to a music industry executive who accused her of being just a big fish in a small pond. "I'm not a fish," Ms. Friedman replied.
Thank you for that. We are going to, so I'll also just mention that the prayer book that will be displayed on the screen is not completely updated. So not all of the lyrics of the songs that we're doing will be shown on the screen. Those of you who have a physical prayer book will be able to see them in the prayer book, most of them. On page 120 is the candle lighting blessing. Is there somebody who'd like to do the blessing over the candles tonight? Nobody? Diane
I'll do
Figueroa.
it. Oh, okay, go ahead.
You want to do it, or do you want Judith to do it? Well, Judith is on Zoom. Okay, go ahead, Judith.
Okay, you sure someone doesn't want to do it in person?
I think it's all right.
Okay, all right.
Do you need me to display the prayer book?
Just for the English, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. I need to do that anyway.
And someone could light your candles.
I will light our candles.
Okay, very good. And I will do mine. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. As these candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light.
Thank you. And we turn now to the Kiddush. Diane Figueroa, would you like to come up and read the Kiddush in English for us? Yes. Julie, choose the microphone.
Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who, finding favor with us, sanctified us with mitzvot. In love and favor, you made the holy Shabbat our heritage, as a reminder of the work of creation. First among our sacred days, it recalls the exodus from Egypt. You chose us and set us apart from the peoples. In love and favor, you have given us your holy Shabbat as an inheritance. Praise to you, Adonai, who sanctifies Shabbat.
If you're able, I invite you to rise.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava v'ratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh bereshit כי הוא יום תחילה למקרא קודש, תחל יציאת מצרים. הבנו בחטא, חטאנו קידשנו מכל העמים, בשבת קודשך באהבה נחלתנו, ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש
You may be seated. We are turning now in our prayer book to page 142 for Shalom Alechem.
Shalom Alechem, Shalom Alechem, Malachei Haret, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Welcome Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Alechem, Shalom Alechem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
The Baruch Hu, the call to worship, is on page 146. That's in the blue bracketed numbers in your prayer book. I invite you, if you're able, to rise.
Baruch Hu et Adonai, Hamevorach. Baruch Adonai, Hamevorach leolam va'ed. Praise the Lord, to whom all praise is due. Praise be the Lord, to whom all praise is due, now and forever. Praise the Lord, to whom our praise is due. Praise be the Lord, to whom our praise is due, now and forever, now and forever, now and forever. Praise the Lord, now and forever, now and forever, now and forever. Praise the Lord.
You may be seated. On page 148, I invite you to read with me. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tsevaot is your name. Ever living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv Aravim. Page 150 is Ahavat Olam.
אהבת עולם בישראל, עמך אהבת, עמך אהבת. תורה ומצוות חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו בשכבנו וחומנו נשיח בחוקיך, ונזמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו באורך ימינו, ובהם נגי יומם בלילה, נגי יומם בלילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל.
The Shema is on page 152. I invite you, if you're able, to rise.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Shem Kevod, Malchuto, Le'olam, Le'olam Va'ed.
You may be seated.
Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy might, with all thy soul, and with all of thy might. And all these words which I command you on this day shall be in thy heart, shall be in thy heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and thou shalt speak of them when thou sittest in thy house, when thou walkest by the way, and when thou risest up, and when thou liest down, and when thou liest down.
Before we turn to page 157, I just want to mention that the English that we just sang for the Ve'ahavta comes from, if you remember, the big, thick Union prayer book, the blue one, that is the one that Debbie Friedman would have been growing up with. And so she put to music the English that appears in that prayer book, you know, quite some time ago already now. On page 157, I invite you to read with me.
1972 to be
In
exact.
1972 is when she did it. 1972. Page 157 at the top of the page, I invite you to read with me. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. And can I just add for just a minute, I'm sorry, that right now in Israel, there's a lot of people who are having a lot of trouble with the concept of joining hands and marching together because they don't see a way right now that that is possible. And so our prayer, part of my prayer tonight is that they may find that way and that they may come to the place where they feel that they have passed through this situation that for so many people feels threatening to the very essence of what Israel is all about, and may they come through it to the other side and be so joyful that they are able to sing and dance and rejoice together. Page 158.
And this is a melody we all know, written in 1989.
Ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 mi khamoch bayel madonna mi khamoch neida bakodesh norati hilo osefele norati hilo osefele malekut charabanecha bokei hayom lifnei Moshe uMiriam zili anu ve'amru zili anu ve'amru Adonai Malach le'olam va'ed Adonai Malach le'olam va'ed.
Page 160.
Shmot tziteinu v'heinu lechayim u'leshalom v'yata v'ad olam v'yata v'ad olam v'yata v'ad olam Ashkivinu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom V'hamidenu Shomereinu lechayim U'peros aleinu Sukat shlomecha Mi'ata ve'ad olam 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 Yisrael, oti leolam. Sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz u'vayom ha'ashvi shavat vayinafash b'ni u'vin b'nei Yisrael oti leolam b'ni u'vin b'nei Yisrael oti leolam Yeshamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, ברית עולם.
The tefillah begins on page 164. I invite you, if you're able, to rise.
Adonai, שפתי תפתחו פי אגיד תהילתך. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your glory. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu ve'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה מלך עוזר מושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני בחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם מכלכל חיים בחסד מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים סומך נופלים ורופא חולים ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו איש עיני עפר מי כמוך בא לגיבורות ומי דומה לך מלך ממיד ומחיי ומצמיח ישועה ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
You may be seated. On page 173, I invite you to read with me. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day, and may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Page 175. You are with us in our prayer, our love, and our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still, clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. And let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha b'yir'ah na'avod. We come now to Modim, our blessing of gratitude. And as we do, I invite you, if you're on Zoom, to put in the chat anything that you're feeling grateful for today, or you can share it with us out loud. And of course, in the room, you can share it out loud. So Patricia says she is grateful that we can rest on the weekends. Diane Schenker, would you unmute? What are you feeling grateful for?
I'm grateful that I can attend services online and for my wonderful and caring family.
Modima nachnu lach. Jan, great to see you. Wow, Jan Hutner is grateful to have been discharged from physical therapy and to have achieved her second week of Pilates classes. And she's walking really well. And she's very glad to be back here with all of us. And we're very glad to see you as well. Modima nachnu lach. Who else in the room?
I have to say something.
Please.
I'm just so grateful to look out and see all these beautiful people sitting in this sanctuary, and people who I've been seeing in a while, and it's just the most wonderful feeling to be here and to look out and see everybody. And
Yes, we have
very grateful.
I think there's around 21 people
more
in the
than-
sanctuary. Yes, I'm getting a vigorous nod. And we have 25 people on Zoom, maybe more if some of you are 2 people. Actually, maybe not more because 3 of you are us. And but yeah, it's wonderful to have so many people for Shabbat. Diane Figueroa. Very grateful to be here in person after 3 years away, and to hear the music live and in person. It's a big difference. It is a big difference. Ron. Wow. So Ron is grateful that his bulbs are blooming or growing? I mean, are they growing now or are they already blooming? They're about to bloom. The birds are engulfing his woodpecker, including a red-bellied woodpecker. May it
No,
stay.
they're engulfing his bird feeder. They're not.
What did I say?
The woodpecker.
They're not engulfing the woodpecker. They're engulfing the bird feeder, including a red-bellied woodpecker. May it stay at the bird feeder and not move to the house. And spring is starting on Monday. Who else?
Right here on Church Avenue, there was a male cardinal standing in this tall tree right at the top and whistling like so loud. Just when I parked the car, and it was like, okay, spring.
Ruth.
Yay. What's her name? Ruth, what's her name? Oh boy.
So Ruth Belay is grateful that she became a grandmother for the first time on March 5th, I want to say. And her daughter had a healthy baby girl named Zohara. That's a beautiful name. It means gold. Linda Horowitz, so nice to see your face.
Oh, thank you. Shabbat Shalom. It's nice that I can actually say welcome back. I'm grateful you had a safe trip, and I'm grateful for services tonight. I'm grateful for the spring coming, the daylight, the warm weather is going to come. I'm just so grateful for good health and family and friends, new friends, as well as seasoned longtime friends. I'm just very grateful tonight.
Amen. Hazel.
I'm grateful, Noni, that you're doing this program. I had the privilege of meeting Debbie when we learned that she did healing services, first at Anshe Chesed and then at Society for the Advancement of Judaism, and then at the JCC. Sandy and I followed her and went faithfully every month to her services. She showed great kindness to Sandy. One night we came in a little late, having trouble parking, and there were no seats. And she just dropped everything she was doing. She raced around, she found a chair, and she said to him, "You will always have a chair." And we followed her to Brooklyn College. And when she died, I sat and watched her funeral. It was the first time I ever streamed anything and watched for 2 hours straight her funeral. And at the time, Sandy must have been very weak. He was in the next room in bed and didn't come to watch it. He passed just a few weeks after she did. And she has such a special place in my heart. And I'm thankful so much, Noni, for you doing this tonight.
Amen. Linda Kushner Silverman. Unmute, please, Linda.
Sorry, I'm grateful that you came back healthy and safe and big smiles. Noni, it's beautiful. You're doing such a wonderful job. And the pianist, really fabulous. Grateful to my neighbor who recommended this pouch that's RFID for keys because my car was broken into for the third time. And this pouch, somehow you put the keys in there and they can't, the robbers can't get a signal to get your car. Unbelievable. So I'm so grateful for information. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Grateful for technology that saves our cars, as well as allows us to attend services and do so many other things. Karen is grateful for friends, family, and Shabbat services. Charlotte is grateful for family and friends. Anybody else? So I'm like overwhelmed with gratitude today. I am grateful to have been able to go on this trip to Israel. I am grateful for all of the people who took the time to be with us. I am grateful for UJA Federation, both for funding it and for having amazing staffers who took such good care of us and, so that we could focus completely on what we were doing, because they were always there to say, it's time to go to the bus, go now. Yes, you have time to go to the bathroom. And I'm so grateful to be back, and I'm so grateful to be here with you. And I am so grateful for Shabbat services, because as we go through the service, I can feel my brain sort of calming back down and getting a little more centered, which even I, as a rabbi, sometimes forget that services can do that for me. And so I'm very glad that is happening as well. And I'm also grateful that Noni is going to share with us a version of Modim from Debbie Friedman.
Erev Shabbat שבכל עת. ערב ובוקר וצהריים, מעולם קיווינו לך, מעולם קיווינו לך.
And we continue on page 178 with our prayer for peace, again, a Debbie Friedman version.
So this is not a, I didn't see that Debbie Friedman wrote Shalom Rav, but this is a beautiful prayer for peace, Nasim Shalom. Nasim Shalom, Tova u'veracha, Chen v'chesed v'rachamim. Nasim Shalom, Tova u'veracha, Chen v'chesed v'rachamim. Let the light of your presence be the light of our lives. Grant us happiness, mercy, and peace. May the people of Israel join hands with the world, and our passion for justice increase. Nasim Shalom, Tova u'veracha, Chen v'chesed v'rachamim. Nasim Shalom, Tova u'veracha, Chen v'chesed v'rachamim. Let the light of your Torah be the light of our dreams. Grant us goodness, grant us blessings and love. May our yearning for peace be a blessing for the world, as the olive branch soars with the dove. Nasim Shalom, Tova u'veracha, Chen v'chesed v'rachamim. Nasim Shalom, Tova u'veracha, Chen v'chesed v'rachamim.
We have come now to our quiet prayer where we take a few moments for our own petitions or our own gratitude. There are words in the prayer book on pages 180 and 181. There are words on the screen, if you can see the screen. But of course, for Tfilat Halev, the prayer for the heart, we can always use the words in our hearts. We continue quietly. We turn our thoughts now to those among us and those in our hearts who are ill and who are in need of healing of body, of mind, or of spirit. Our Misha Berach is on page 371. And those of you on Zoom, if you have names to add, you may put those in the chat. I know some of you have already done so. But please continue to do that if you have other names. And everyone will have a chance to add names out loud, whether in person or on Zoom. We hold in our thoughts and in our hearts for healing this evening Dan Sasher, Ira Weiss, Allison Plummer, Rabbi Dara Lerner, Susan Sisler, Joellen Fox, Alan Fremer, Valerie Pace, George Landberg, Sarah Ratliff, Kenny Schweiger, Paul Gold, Leslie Hirsch, Joan Lifshitz, Amy Juskowitz Soonseller, Deanna Roth, Jonathan Falkowski, Martha and Ed Vincent, Ingrid Grosso, Audrey Cohen, Eddie DeAngelis, Vicky Lightnaker, Nettie Trummer, Mia Gannon, Jeff Abel, Monica Bayer, Erwin and Patty Cohen, Deborah Kosman, Jeffrey Schwimmer, Grace Schneider, Liz Yasuda, Mark and Paul Steiner, Celia Karp, Anne-Marie Rogan, Marion Mandel, Sharon Zinn, Nicole Moskowitz, Evelyn Sten, Stephen Belay, Deborah Marcus, Mike Wenzelberg, Elliot Drucker, Fred Siegel, Linda Abramowitz, Janet Dankowitz, Katie Pandolfo, and Ruth Cooper. I'm told that Maxwell Pandolfo is better. Hooray. We escort him off the Misha Berach list. Augustine Davis, Damian Colon, Jerome Taylor, Ed Robinson, Joanna Marie, Teresa O'Sullivan, Jimmy Jenkins, Chanel Kamabach, Julette Dale, Maureen Dale, Elena RM, Warren Feliz, Sylvia Solva, DeAndre Wynn, Jennifer Magoob, Sarah West, Tamia Bethia Williams, Sarah Bard, Larry Perro, Jonathan Dash, Maureen Dash, Lila Fox, Robin and Neil Parr, Rowan Grant, Stacy and David Mauser, Hannah Paynes, Arlene Kakulis, Judith Weiss, Angela Reed, Harriet Holtzman, Ernest Tornincasa, Dr. Helen Kramer, Dr. Stephen Jubilier, Olivia Zelling, Evelyn Drucker, Danish Mand, Eileen Schoenfeld, Pat Flood, Roz Nadell, Cindy Rabinowitz, Dr. Craig Rosenbaum, Amy Langer, George Ridler, Ann Kelly, Nancy Kelly. Diane Schenker, did you have names to add? Please unmute.
No, I believe you got Robin and Neil Power. Pronounced, Power is pronounced power.
Ah, thank you. Yes, power. Linda Kushner Silverman. Could you unmute, Linda? Linda?
Unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we hear you.
Oh, strange. Jackson Kushner and Tara Kushner, Carol and Stevie Doppelt, Phyllis Benjamin, Shelley Samet, Lavana Tenen, Million Israel Yashami, David Gershon, and Daniel Silverman. He just had his knee replaced on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Yep.
If you are anyone else on Zoom, if you are here in the room and you have names to add, please rise or raise your hand. Freema? Vicky? Debbie? Mona? Janice? We include also all of those who have been wounded in service to our country or Israel, and those who have been harmed in recent disasters, whether human created or natural, including all of those who have been hurt in the wars in Ukraine, Afghanistan, Syria, and other places, those who have been hurt in terrorism in Israel and elsewhere, those who have been harmed during the protests in Israel, and also who are living with such fear and worry right now, and those suffering from COVID-19. Page 371 in the middle of the page.
מי שברך אבותינו מקור הברכה לאמותינו. May the source of strength, oh bless the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu b'kor habracha l'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Tamara commented in the chat that this is one of Debbie Friedman's most sung pieces, and that is true. And in fact, it's printed, her words are printed in our prayer book. And I don't think that's the only Debbie Friedman version that is printed in our prayer book. I will say also that there's a video that you can probably find on YouTube that is a mashup of communities of all, Jewish communities of all kinds, from Hasidim to, you know, renewal, literally the whole spectrum of Judaism. A lot of times we talk about the whole spectrum of Judaism and we exclude the ultra-Orthodox from that, but this includes Hasidim, everybody singing Yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai lai, the Debbie Friedman tune for Havdalah, the ceremony that ends Shabbat. It is used across the Jewish world. They maybe don't know it's her, but I mean, there's so many tunes that we use that we don't know who wrote them because we're not cantorial soloists. And Noni's always like, which tune do you want to do for that? And I'm like, the one that goes like this. And she's like, who's the composer? And I'm like, I have no idea. I learned it by hearing it sung. Anyway, so as I said, I'm very glad to be back. And one of the things that I have said is that I've received so much information in the last few days that I'm not ready to talk about it. But it occurs to me that while I think many of you are here tonight for the Debbie Friedman music and the Women's History Month, possibly some of you are here because you think, you know, hey, Rabbi just got back from Israel. She's going to talk about what she learned. And so and also because the situation there is happening right now and changing so quickly that I actually don't have the luxury to take the time to sit down and go through my 60 pages of notes and synthesize and take my time and this and that. So I was going to talk about rabbis who are women. because this is our Women's History Month service. So I'll talk about that very briefly, but then I think I will try to tell you some of the themes from this week. So first of all, in the lifetime, so one of the things I want to say about Women's History Month is that where we are as women today, so much of it actually happened very recently. And it's easy to forget, maybe for me, because I'm younger than a lot of you, but it's easy to forget that how things are right now is not the way they've always been. And in fact, is not the way they've been even in our lifetimes. And so when we talk about women being rabbis, there are not very many of us, but there are a few of us who were alive when the first modern woman rabbi was ordained in 1935. Yeah, I know you weren't thinking I was going to say that. No, there's a lot more of us who were alive in 1972. But in 1935 was the first modern rabbi who got ordained, and it was in Germany. And her name was Regina Jonas, pronounced in English, Regina Jonas. So some of you will have heard of her probably. She was ordained in Germany. Her thesis was a Talmudic proof that it is permitted for women to be rabbis. And there was one rabbi who said, I would like to ordain you, but I just can't because, you know, you're a woman. And then there was another rabbi who was like, yes, I'll ordain you. She practiced for only a few years because, you know, the Holocaust, and she ended up being murdered in Auschwitz in 1944, but she was the first. Then in lots of our lifetimes, in fact, I think maybe there's probably 2 people in this room who are not yet alive in 1972. I was even alive then, and I know you think I'm very young compared to a lot of you. But I was even alive then in 1972 when the Reform movement ordained the first American rabbi who was a woman, Sally J. Prezand. And by the way, I prefer to say a rabbi who's a woman rather than a woman rabbi. I don't set myself so much apart from man rabbis, and I do call them man rabbis. So that happened. The conservative movement only started ordaining women as rabbis in the mid 1980s. So like I was nearly a grown-up then, and lots of you were grown-ups then already. And then, and today, I just went on this trip. There were 21 rabbis, 4 of us were women, and you might say, oi, only 4. But apparently 65% of the rabbis who were invited were women. But for whatever reason, it seems like more women who are rabbis than men who are rabbis say, oh, no, I can't. My community needs me too much. I can't leave. There's too much I have to do. So make of that what you will. But besides me, they were Sasha Bakken, who is a Reform rabbi in Westchester, just 1 year out of rabbinical school. She's at Westchester Reform. Ilana Schachter, who is a Reform rabbi on Long Island, and Bracha Jaffe, who is an Orthodox rabbi at HIR, the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale. And I did see some eyebrows go up. Yes, there are some modern Orthodox rabbis who are women now. They are mostly ordained at Maharat, which is a yeshiva for women that was started by Rabbi Avi Weiss. It was very controversial. It was started not that long ago, 10, 15 years maybe. And so in the modern Orthodox world too, there are starting to be rabbis who are women, and there are a few in Israel as well. And we did meet with some of them. So that said, I will also say that it was only 1973 when women were able to have a checking account without a male cosigner. And that's something that I think about a lot because that seems so basic, right? And I think even today on like house deeds and things, it's problematic if you don't have a man. Or no, I'll take that back because I'm not completely sure what I'm talking about there. I read something, there was something, but I'll take that one back. Never mind about that. Okay, let's talk about Israel. So in Israel.
Excuse me, Rabbi.
Yes, Helene?
Suzanne inducted Hannah Bernstein as our spiritual leader at PTBAS.
You mean Sally?
Yes.
So Rabbi Presand installed Suzanne Bernstein as cantor
Yes.
at PTBS. That's amazing. That's awesome.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that.
Tamara shared it as well.
Say that one more time.
Tamara shared it as well.
Tamara shared in it as well. And Tamara is going, leave me out of it. It's okay, whatever.
Well,
She's waving her hands.
she put it in chat, so I thought I'd mention
Oh,
it.
she said it as well. She put it in the chat. I see. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Great. Yes. So I think you mean installed rather than inducted. Inducted is the word that Hebrew Union College uses for ordained for cantors. But then when you're at a specific synagogue, you get installed. Doesn't matter. It's semantic, but I'm like that. Yes, Vicky? Jonas. Okay, so Vicky has a book. What's the title of that book, Vicky? Okay, RBG's Brave and Brilliant Women, 33 Jewish Women to Inspire Everyone, or something along those lines. You can Google it and get it for yourself. Who? By Nadine Epstein. Okay, so Vicky shared a little bit about Regina Jonas, who has a chapter in that book, and how she did services and cared for people after Kristallnacht. And when services were no longer permitted, she did services in secret, and she believed that it was a cultural imperative for women to be allowed to be rabbis because of their innate qualities of compassion and caring, which, by the way, is an essentialist thing about women that I don't actually agree with, at least not completely. And you know, I mean, it was the 1930s. Yes, of course, of course. Okay.
Okay, Rabbi.
Yes, Judith?
I remember when I was growing up, and I have no idea what her name is, that one of my relatives, I think it was a cousin of my mother's, she lived in Cincinnati, I remember that, a woman was ordained as a rabbi.
Oh, a cousin of Judith's mother was ordained as a rabbi in Cincinnati.
I don't know her name, but I remember my mother going there for her being ordained.
Do you remember the year?
Her mother was a seamstress, and she made my dress for my bat mitzvah.
Well, that's exciting. All right. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. So are we ready to switch gears and hear about Israel a little bit? All right. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to try not to do this for an hour. And I welcome your suggestions, not right this minute, but a little bit later, for how you would like to receive more information. Like, do you want me to do a talk? Do you want me to just keep writing on Facebook? I mean, I'm definitely going to write about it for the newsletter. And I'm probably definitely going to talk about it next Friday night as well. But let me know if there are other ways that you would like to receive this information. So let me start with a couple of months ago, Israel formed a new government. I'm not going to get into how Israeli government works, but basically it's a coalition. So after the elections, all of the parties who got a number of seats in the Knesset, they have to get together and form a ruling coalition that has at least 61 seats, which is one more than half in the Knesset, which is the parliament. And so Benjamin Netanyahu, whose party Likud received the most votes, received the most seats, formed a coalition that is the most right-wing coalition that Israel has ever had. And this already becomes a becomes a concern for a lot of Israelis. And now those of you who consider yourself to be Republicans in the United States or right wing in any way or in the United States, don't be upset when I talk about right wing being in Israel being something that's very concerning. Right and left are not the same in Israel as they are here. They are not the same. They don't mean the same thing. I'm not going to get into that tonight, but I'll be happy to explain more about that later. But what this coalition has done is has put forth a package of bills for judicial reform. The Supreme Court in Israel has a lot of power. There are not checks and balances in the Israeli government the same way that there are here. There are not really three branches of government. There are really only two. The legislative, which is also the executive, because the prime minister is the one who is kind of part of the legislative branch, but is also kind of the head of state. There is a president, but he doesn't have very much political power. And then there's the judiciary. Now, the judiciary, starting in the 90s, and especially in 1995, took a lot more power for itself through a judge called Aharon Barak. And he did a thing that is referred to as the judicial revolution. And he basically said, the Supreme Court has the right to review and overturn, if necessary, any law that it deems to be unconstitutional, which is an interesting thing because Israel doesn't have a constitution. What Israel does have are what's called basic laws. And these laws are make sort of a de facto constitution, but they're weird because they get passed like any other law with a majority of the Knesset, but they're called basic laws, meaning like these are one of them is the law of human dignity. And they're considered very important laws, although they can be overturned or amended or created just like other laws. They're just called basic laws. But the court then also claimed the right to review any law, regardless if somebody who was harmed by it brought a lawsuit. Like anybody could come to the court and say, we want you to review this law, and they could review it and overturn it. And then the Knesset has no recourse. Then also, they gave the attorney general, who is the lawyer for the government, the power to tell the government, no, you can't pass that law. It contradicts the basic laws. And anyway, so suffice it to say, the Supreme Court has a lot of power. And there are people on the right primarily who feel like this is no good. And so the reforms that are in play make it possible to put into any law a clause that says this law may not be reviewed and overturned by the Supreme Court, so that the Supreme Court has no standing to review that law, and that the Knesset may overturn the Supreme Court's ruling by a simple majority of 61 members voting to nullify the Supreme Court's ruling. So people are super duper concerned about this because they feel like that will take away any possibility for the Supreme Court to have a check on the Knesset, and that this will essentially make Israel stop being a democracy because one branch of government will have all the power. So and then there's the doomsday scenario. The doomsday scenario that people fear is that the Knesset will pass a law saying the court no longer has the power to overturn laws. And then the court will rule that that law is unconstitutional and therefore overturned. And then something will happen where, the Knesset will say, here's a law, and the Supreme Court will say no and overturn it. And then there will be some kind of action required from either the police or the military. Like it'll be a law that demands some kind of action. And then who will the police or the military follow? Who's ruling? Will they follow what the Knesset says, or will they follow what the court says? Because they contradict each other. And the court says we have this power, and the Knesset says, no, you don't. And then whoever the military or the police choose to follow 50% of their people will walk away, because it's roughly sort of half and half of. And so that's what people are saying is this doomsday scenario. And I'll just say that while one of the things that we learned is that you cannot map what happens in the US onto what happens in Israel. Israel is a different place and things are different there. But this particular thing reminded me of the election that went to the Supreme Court, the Al Gore election, where the Supreme Court was deciding who won. And everybody was saying, you know, this could be a constitutional crisis, because what if the Supreme Court says one thing and then the presidential candidate says something else, and who will people believe? And then Al Gore conceded in order to prevent that from happening. But nobody has done anything like that yet in Israel, but it's early days. So there are unprecedented civic protests. Israel is a society with a lot of protesting, but there's 500,000 people in the streets, and they're not just the secular left-wing Jews. There are Jews across the board, smaller numbers certainly of the kippah wearing and the more Orthodox Jews, but it's an unprecedented amount of protesting. Also, the protesters are waving the Israeli flag in huge numbers. Those of you who have seen my pictures and videos from the protests I went to last Saturday night have seen this. Unprecedented protests, and unprecedented using the flag for left-wing protests. This was the flag for a long time has been considered to be a symbol more of the right-wing nationalists, and for the left wing to be saying this is also our symbol is a new thing. They're reclaiming the flag for themselves. A lot of people that we talked to said that there is hope, even though some of them were also very deeply concerned. There are a lot of people working on compromises, and there are people saying things like, you know, this is like they did a deliberately extreme proposal because they expected negotiation, because that's what happens. You do an extreme proposal, like, you know, when you're going into a salary negotiation, you don't ask for what you want, you ask for double what you want. Now I've given myself away, and you expect to get half of it, right? Isn't that right? I mean, I feel like that's a thing. Maybe not in salary negotiations. In some negotiations, you ask for way more than what you want because you expect to negotiate, and you expect to only get some of what you want. I've seen it in movies, you know, like it's $25 for this. I'll give you 15. I'll give it to you for 20, you know, whatever. And they agree on, you know, 19 and a half. Okay, so there's reasons for hope, and I'm going to give you just one more thing because I really could go on for days. And that is that somebody, and I can't at this exact moment remember who it was, said to us, Israel is really good at driving off a cliff and solving it in midair before they hit the ground. And so that's what's happening now. Israel is driving off a cliff, and everybody's like, ah, and they're going to come up with something before they hit the ground. And some people have said this is either a constitutional crisis or a constitutional opportunity, that this is a time when there's an opportunity to perhaps, you know, create a constitution, or, and then somebody said, I went to my friends and I told them these are the two options, constitutional crisis, constitutional opportunity. And they said, why do you think that's the only two options? There's the third option. Israel will put a Band-Aid on it and kick the can down the road. So that's where we are. And in the Torah, we are finishing the book of Exodus. We're finishing the book of Exodus, in which there was just last week, in last week's portion, a crisis of the golden calf, a crisis of faith that could have marked the end. Moses threw down the tablets in his rage. But then there were two more tablets, and the people continued on their way together. And when we come to the end of a book, what do we say, Freema? Chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. And so my prayer for us and for Israel is chazak, chazak, hanit chazek. May we not allow ourselves to be torn apart. May we come together with strength and faith and strength, and may that strengthen us as a people, and may it strengthen Israel as a nation. Amen and Shabbat Shalom.
Just before we sing the Aleinu, I just want to warn you that this is a Debbie Friedman Aleinu, and it was I've never done this Aleinu. Took me a while to sort of get it in my ear, and I thought maybe I could find a YouTube or somebody singing this Aleinu, and I typed in on YouTube Debbie Friedman Aleinu and see Debbie Friedman with a guitar, and I'm like, oh great, and then she goes Aleinu l'shabeach la'adam hakol. I'm like, oh great. Anyway, see if you can.
I invite you, if you're able, to rise for the Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach on hakol la'atit gedula leyotze bereshit shelo asanu kegoyei haratzot ve'lo samanu kemishpechot ha'adama she'lo sam chelkinu kachem tikor alinu kechol hamonam kechol hamonam ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהי אדוני אחד ושמו אחד ושמו אחד ושמו אחד.
You may be seated. We turn our thoughts now to those who are no longer with us, our loved ones who have died in the past days or weeks or months, or in past years at this time of the year. The Mourner's Kaddish is on page 598. If you're on Zoom and have names to add for the Mourner's Kaddish, I invite you to put them in the chat, and everyone will have a chance to add names out loud. We remember those who have died in the past year. Zelda Klein, Usha Gorty, Elliot Woofsey, Carol Davis, Jerry Prezioso, Charles Dentrone, Murray Schechter, John Honan, Dottie Weiss Tabickman, Harold Shepard Jr., Eva Braxmajer, Madeline Hyatt, Ed Friedman, Ronald Homan, Erwin Bernstein, Shirley Amrani, Harry Goldberg, Lisa Friedman, Eleanor Teplitz, Patricia Christensen, Thea Platt-Glasser, Sharon Cooper, William Fritz, Bernard Cohen, Lucy Palazzolo, Blair Ford, Shlomo Nakash, Arlene Scher, Abraham Finkel, Ron Cricky, Mimi Karp, Rochelle Rolnick, Elaine Drucker, Matthew Brunner, Maddie Rosenbaum, Myron Jacobson, Lester Schenker, John Belay, Marianne Chinsky. Included on our yard site list today are Abraham Berkowitz, Roz Baylor's brother-in-law, I think, Wallace Ostrover, Nancy Ostrover's husband, Estelle Pomerantz, Yvette's mother, Mary Robinson, Ruth Levine's aunt, May Schwartz, Ben Schwartz's mother, and Frances Udell, Jackie Udelowitz's mother. We include also Vivian Dacey, Veronica Roberts, Ellen Rothstein's cousin, Beryl Belmont Jorgrau, and Martin Smilowitz, Emmanuel Barinholtz, Paul Markowitz, George Politis, Belle Radum, and Barbara Weiser. Does anyone else have names to add? Please rise or raise your hand. Vicki? If you want to, sure. Can you come up? Can you come up? And we'll get the other names first. Other names? Eric? Anybody else? Anyone else on Zoom? David Haley Goldbrenner.
Goldbrenner, yes. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Vicki has a bit to say about Jonathan Zimmett's mother. Please come right up to the mic.
Okay. All right. So she was on our yard site list for a while. Okay. So she was a mother of three, grandmother, great grandmother. She lived until 101 years old. She was a very kind and perceptive person who loved art, music, and travel. She was a very actively involved Rebbitzin for many years, I think more than 40. She was the principal of their synagogue's religious school for many years. She was a beloved choir director and Holocaust educator. And she often talked about this very small Torah, that family Torah that she had smuggled out of Germany. And she was born in Germany, and so was her husband. She was the same age my grandmother would have been. So even though I only met her a few times, she was like a grandmother to me, and I'm just a little older than her own grandchildren. And she had her mind to the end. The last time I saw her, we visited her with some help. She was able to play Scrabble with her son and myself. And the year before that, I needle pointed her this like little thing about this big that said, happy 100th birthday. And she had it hanging in her kitchen, every day since that. And her son has it now. And so many people, especially early childhood Jewish educators and singers of Jewish choral music, still talk about the positive influence she has had on their lives. And her son did something on Zoom just a couple of nights ago, in honor of her. And they talking about her, her whole life in Germany and how she came here and how she, was involved. She got at her house, she got married and got involved with the synagogue. She actually lived in London for a while, was a governess, and they got engaged before he came here first, her husband, and then she became after, and they got married here.
Thank you, Vicki. There's a railing if you go all the way over to the side of the bima. So Jonathan Zimmett, who is the son of the person that Vicki was remembering, was a classmate of mine also in seminary. Just mentioned that.
Rabbi, if I could just add, Lily, I remember Lily because her husband, Rabbi Zimmett, was the Hillel director when I was in college back in the late 50s. And I did get to see her probably she wasn't quite 100, maybe she was 99. And I remember her fondly as well. So I can't believe it's a year already, but
2
thank
years.
you.
2 years, Hazel.
2 already? Oh my God. Okay.
All right. Thank you for those remembrances. The Mourner's Kaddish is on page 598. I invite you to rise and join in or to participate according to your own custom. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chaye dekol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehe shmei rabbah mevorach leolam ulalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yithalal shemei dekudisha berichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush bechata v'nechemata. Damiran b'alma v'yimru amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn and comfort to the bereaved here among us and wherever they may be. And let us say, amen. You may be seated.
Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru amen.
Let me just say that for a long time, that was my very, very, very favorite Jewish tune of all. And now announcements. And thank you everybody for sticking with this extra specially long service. Adrian, our president, is going to make announcements.
Yes, and Adrian's going to make it really, really brief. This was a really wonderful service. And, I started looking up Debbie Friedman YouTube videos before I came here. There's a really wonderful one of Debbie and Peter Yarrow singing Day is Done from one of the biennials. It's really wonderful I was really moved by that. Anyway, tomorrow, religious school, then Biyachad is in-house and on Zoom. And then there is a special Shabbat service with the Girl Scouts. And it's going to be a learning opportunity as well. The Girl Scouts will learn a little bit about what the service is like. And there's going to be a light lunch afterwards. And I'm told that there will be cookies. There will be cookies on the table. And just as an added note, the Girl Scouts are starting free shipping if you order online cookies Monday. I posted the link, and I think Lori did as well. So yes, exactly. That's correct. Sunday morning, the caring committee is meeting at 11 o'clock on Zoom. There's another youth group game night. Game afternoon and evening, sort of. That's on Sunday as well. The first one was a huge success. So we're looking forward to this one as well. Monday, gentle chair yoga, Torah study on Thursday with Rabbi Heidi at 1 o'clock. Israeli dance, 7:30 every Thursday. Tat Shabbat every Friday. And we'll be here back again. Poetry Friday night? Yeah. Yes, the poetry, the return of poetry. Yes. There are a few other things. We are doing a food drive in honor of well, for Passover. There's two ways to donate. There's a box in the sanctuary. Bring your non-perishable and non-expired foods. They're in the box. The box is not labeled, but it's a cardboard box. You can't miss it. Okay, it'll be labeled. And if you choose to make a monetary donation, you can write a check to the Marks JCH, but the check should be sent here so we can keep track of how many donations we're getting for the Marks JCH. That's going on through April 10th. And gala luncheon honoring our treasurers, past and present, Helene Smith, Jennifer Tattenbaum. It is the time now to buy your tickets, to place your ads. If you haven't done that, do that now. Second night, Passover Seder, 6 p.m. Thursday, April 6th. We are taking reservations. And then there is a Regina Opera fundraiser, 3 p.m. May 20th. The Student Prince. Pick up the flyer, read the what's happening, learn more about all of these things that are going on. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
And I just have one more announcement.
Yes.
So next Friday night, my beloved Mr. Michael Tornick, who is just so wonderful, will not be here because he's involved in a show. And you're not allowed to play a show on Shabbat, but you can do that. And so I've asked, it's sort of a long story, but I won't make it so long. There's an organist at Riverside Church, and Tuesday night is Bach's birthday. And beside loving to sing in the synagogue, I also love to sing early music and music of Bach. And we're doing a Bach Magnificat at this beautiful Riverside Church up by Columbia. And I do have some flyers if you would like to take one. Bach's birthday bash. They're going to do, we're singing the Magnificat. There's a Brandenburg concerto and a big organ piece. And the young organist, the main organist there is my friend Christopher Cregan, who's a brilliant musician. He's a conductor. But there's a young organist named Alan Montgomery. He's the associate, and he's quite young. And I've asked him, where am I going?
I'm trying to get you on the camera.
Come here. No,
There, this is good. Okay, or that's good.
So Alan Montgomery, I'm singing the Bach Magnificat, and we've become friendly. And I did a little program with him, and I was singing some Italian songs. And he said, come rehearse in Riverside Church. He has an office there. And I went into his office, and he's got his piano and his music books. And I look on the shelf, and there's all this Jewish music, volumes and volumes of Jewish music. And I said, Alan, all this Jewish music. He said, I'm Jewish. My mom is Jewish. She's from Ukraine. And he considers himself Jewish. And when he was at Juilliard, one of his papers was on the use of the organ in the American synagogue. And so he's coming next week. And I'm asking you all who are here tonight, please come back and meet him. He wants to look at our organ, which is a mess. And it's, you laugh, but it's almost to cry about. Because I haven't been up to the organ in a long time. He wants to look at it. It's a beautiful organ. And a few years back, the organ tuner came and he said, well, this instrument is worth about $250,000. And then when they started doing all the construction upstairs and putting in all these wires, they cut the wires to the organ. It doesn't even turn on anymore. It doesn't play at all. But Alan wanted to come and look at it. He's the most brilliant organist. He plays this organ at Riverside Church that looks like you can't even imagine how many manuals and how many stops, and the sound of it is just incredible for anybody of any religion to hear. And he wants to come and see this organ, and it's going to make him cry. The pipes are up here.
Is he going to play for services next week?
Well, he's playing for services next week on this piano that will sound like an organ. And he said, I'm coming to play. And he said, but I'll only play music of the classical reform. So if you come next week, you'll hear some music that we've heard of Lewandowski and Janowski and all the, there's not going to be any pop music. So this was our, it's meaningful to me, but I want people to be here to listen to him play. And he wants to see the organ, and maybe we can find a way to get it turned back on just to see if there's anything that can be done to do any kind of minor repairs, just to get it sounding so we can hear it again.
Well, thank you.
but it's
Thank you.
it's in rough shape.
Okay, I just
More-
want you to know the service is going on so long that the rabbi has a low battery alert on all of her devices here. So it's definitely time to end.
If
Shabbat
anybody
shalom.
wants to come and hear Bach, take one of
Shabbat
these,
shalom.
take a flyer and come
We're
on
going to
Tuesday night.
conclude. We're going to conclude with a song.
We are.
Page 6. It's on page 632.
Is
it?
I don't
I
think
think that's an accident.
no, it's not.
It's
in
called
the-
Build This House. I don't think it's in the prayer
So,
book.
listen to the words of this song. You don't have it in your book, but I'll try to sing the words so clearly
Yeah,
that
no, it's not in the book.
you'll hear them. Build this house, Debbie Friedman. Look at the light, see the world through the windows. The roof is as high as the heavens above. The doors open widely so those who have entered know when they enter they're welcomed with love. With wisdom we build this house and we'll make it strong with understanding and in truth. We build with knowledge and precious and beautiful things. With love in our hearts, we have taught one another in hopes that our dreams will grow every day. We continue to build on what we share in common when we sit in our house, when we walk on our way. With wisdom, we build this house and we'll make it strong with understanding and in truth. We build with knowledge and precious and beautiful things. With knowledge and precious and beautiful things.
If you're able, if you're awake, I invite you to rise. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God bless you and keep you. May God's face shine on you and be gracious to you. May God lift God's face towards you and give you peace. Amen. And before we go to the oneg, which I know you're going to stay for because it's only 9:15. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Thank you for hanging in there. It's lovely to see you all. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. And I'll try to figure out that it is evening. I am so confused.